Sometimes, Nickelodeon likes to get pretty scary, spooky, and dark when it comes to their programming. More so back in the day than now, but nevertheless, the network had its fair share of programming that will make you want to turn off the TV, flip on the lights, and not sleep for a few days. At one point, they made what could be considered their darkest program yet. No, I'm not talking about Invader Zim. I see the comments before they happen, and I understand where you're coming from. But we're talking about Are You Afraid of the Dark? The 90s were the Wild West of testing out new shows with fun, weird, and different concepts, which could also include making something darker than you'd find on a kids channel these days. Nickelodeon decided to co-produce a series with Canadian production company Sonar, who originally came up with it. What it would be was an anthology show filled with a new tale of horror each episode that could be weird, but most oftentimes would be dark to make you feel uneasy and frightened. Think of it as your early introduction at a young age to the horror genre, and it wouldn't be overly toned down for that fact. The show genuinely left you feeling some type of way by the end of each tale told, and for some reason, I was drawn back to this show and thinking on some of the memories I had from watching it. You know, the episodes that left a lifelong impact on my psyche, and now I'm here to unpack this trauma with you as we take a stroll in the woods, pull up to a campfire, and tell the tale of Nickelodeon's darkest show. Are you afraid of the dark? Well, are you? Because I'm not. I am really brave after all, and you should admire that fact about me. Ah, I can't see. Where are the lights? Whew, there they are. See? Nothing to worry about. Ah! The original pilot for the series premiered in Canada on YTV in 1990, with Nickelodeon stepping in to fully co-produce the series and bring it to the US, as the pilot would play on the network in 1991, thanks to DJ McHale and Ned Candle outreaching the distribution of it, and Nickelodeon wanting to team up in general. Officially, another year later, Are You Afraid of the Dark would premiere on Nickelodeon August 15th, 1992, and you were presented with the format of the series. A group of teens would all come together at night somewhere at a secret undisclosed location in the woods and sit around a campfire. They were dubbed the Midnight Society, as whoever is presenting the story that episode starts things off by saying submitted for approval of the Midnight Society, before midnight dust was tossed into the flames and our visual aid for the tale would begin. It was our intro vessel to the journey about to happen, and you never know what you were going to get, only the teen reading the title of the tale before we get into it. It's a very basic yet effective storytelling device. It's been used across many genres to begin a story, but this felt so relatable, hanging out with your friends, trying to scare each other with a spooky story that has you on edge if you hear a branch snap in the distance of the dark woods around you. The tales themselves wouldn't just be read to you, instead you received what would feel like a short film, with a new story to experience every episode that would suck you in and leave you feeling different by the time it's over.
Afraid of the dark will rise to Snick again. And now to Snick with Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Something I find quite charming about the show is the group in the Midnight Society in general having their own characteristics and moments outside of the stories told that give you some external lore, making it feel like a more realistic group of friends that have their own interests or personal experiences that can drive the type of stories that they tell. For example, Gary is the original founder of this version of him and his friends' Midnight Society, and has running themes throughout his tales. He'll have the reoccurring character of Sardo, who runs a shop that will often lead to these magical or enchanted items being brought into his stories so that people who get them learn quickly of the problems that they can cause in their lives. The group had a fun dynamic, and it really added this extra layer that made the show enjoyable. Mix this with the campy nature of how the stories would be filmed, where some episodes can feel like it was made by kids using their father's newly purchased but oversized camcorder to shoot an amateur short film on, and that's not to be disparaging. I think it's genuinely charming. It's stuff I did with friends when I was younger. But seriously, the show had so many moments of actual horror that was effective in giving the Nickelodeon audience real frights. It would be like a game that you'd play where you'd watch to prove that it didn't bother you and nothing scares you, but secretly you'd be freaked out sometimes and want to not finish the episode. Now, there are some episodes that I grew up watching that have some truly memorable moments that have stuck with me since I originally saw them. The Tale of the Super Specs is a great example of when the series wouldn't shy away from ending things off with a darker ending. Rather than getting a conclusion where it calms things back down, lets the evils disappear, disappear, and for the most part can be considered happy, and hey, maybe even a lesson is learned. But that's not really the case here, as this episode not only has the constant buildup of a girl putting on and taking off these special glasses, where every time they're on, she sees these creepy silhouetted figures that at one point lead to this dark lady figure pointing at her as these figures start moving towards her. But by the end of it, it opens up this parallel dark world to our world, to where the figures can now be seen without the glasses, and the dark lady is revealed as this powerful phantom who ends up telling our characters that the two universes cannot exist on the same plane, blaming them for messing with the cosmic seal, and she's trying to restore the balance of it all, casting a spell that at first makes it seem that everything is okay again, but in reality, we're seeing the alternate side of things, where the phantom and the alternate versions of the kids saw our protagonists as the invading problem, just as much as our view into it from our initial perspective was trying to get rid of them. And then ending the episode with our three characters now shown trapped in a crystal ball, all screaming for help. And that's a solid, not happy ending on its own. But then to end the campfire telling of the story, the same type of glasses were handed out to everyone, as when they're put on, they all see a dark figure appear and run screaming, which is pretty great and scary on its own, but what makes it even better is that it was just a prank that some of the teens put together as an April Fool's joke on everyone else. A great way to leave you on a slightly fun and cheerier note after a fateful end to our story. And clowns are something that frighten a lot of people, and Are You Afraid of the Dark surely wanted to play into that. And to add on to that similar mold, fusing that fear with that of a court jester. The episode The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner brings us an episode that really set out to leave you scared. A young artist who wants to eventually become a comic book artist finds himself receiving a special invitation to the opening of a new comic shop, and when he arrives it seems great, but he soon realizes that he's the only one there aside from the owner of the shop. After speaking for a bit, she brings up if he's ever heard of the Ghastly Grinner, revealing a kept-away comic book about a court jester who was this evil, terrifying villain. There is only one issue of the comic, as the creator even found it too much for himself to handle. The Ghastly Grinner was too scary apparently, and the creator disappeared after making this one issue. The owner ends up giving it to the kid for free for coming to the opening, and he begins spending time reading it in appropriate places, like in class of course, where he gets caught and the teacher takes it from him before she drops the one-of-a-kind, or in the teacher's words now, a none-of-a-kind, comic in the fish tank, ruining it. Later at home, he now tries to continue reading it, but needs to dry it out a bit, so he gets the brilliant idea of putting it in the microwave, and here's just a warning for you, don't do this! Eventually, an explosion happens in the kitchen, and the microwave opens up to a flash of light and smoke, with the comic seemingly being good as new. Well, aside from the hole in the middle of it, and now there's a jester-shaped hole in the wall, with laughter filling the ambiance of what's going on. Then his parents start smiling extra wide, oozing blue slime from their mouths and beginning to laugh maniacally. From this point, the episode goes off the rails, as Ethan here has unleashed the Ghastly Grinner onto the world, and it's affecting people left and right, turning them into these blue liquid dripping zombie-like versions of themselves. At one point it happens to the bus driver when they're riding the bus, as his head then spins around and he tries to cause an accident with the bus. Eventually, to fight off and take on the Ghastly Grinner, Ethan along with his friend and the comic book shop owner have to come up with a plan to end his story, something the original creator tried to do after seeing how horrifying of a character he made was, but was captured by the Ghastly Grinner before completing the second volume called The Death of the Ghastly Grinner. The only way to do so is having Ethan use his art skills to finish the comic and end the story. It's a really creative episode. The nonsensical aspects of a comic character coming to life through the power of microwave technology and all that doesn't need to have the most scientific explanation because of how good everything else is. The scares and frights are some of the best, if not the best, in the series. The design of the Ghastly Grinner is creepy, and what he does to people is visually horrific. There are so many really cool, tense, and thriller-esque moments throughout the episode that elevate the journey Ethan goes on. Also, when the Ghastly Grinner says this,
"Know what happened to the last guy who tried to stop me? Let's just say that his subscription was cancelled."
That's the perfect amount of cheese for a one-liner. I love it.
Afraid of the dark will rise to sneak again. And now to Snick with Are You Afraid of the Dark?
The ending as well really seals the deal of why this episode is iconic. It brings both Ethan, the shop owner, and the Ghastly Grinner into the comic itself, leaving Ethan's friend alone with the comic to view the results of what happened. In comic book fashion, it's a funny end to how they defeat the Ghastly Grinner, and he's all like, "Microwaves, no!" as our trapped heroes now question how to get out of the comic. The story wasn't over though, as the Ghastly Grinner returns, and the only way to stop him from hurting everyone in the comic gimmick is for an eraser to remove the ghastly Grinner's face so he becomes powerless in turning his victims into the blue drooling smiling zombies, and magically our heroes are freed, and the day is saved? It's overall a happy ending, but everything in execution here was so well done that I don't think I'll ever forget it. I also vividly remember the episode of The Tale of the Dead Man's Float, which would play into the fear of something being underneath the water when you were in the pool, as we get to see one kid dragged down into the secret pool that some kids discovered, as then a horrifying blood and guts covered zombie creature comes out of the pool, and for this being a kid's show on Nickelodeon, this was the scariest and most disturbing thing to see at the time. Today, looking back on it, I really appreciate the level of detail that went into the character design of the evil water menace here. It really shows the use of some great practical effects, and it plays into a fear that many kids have about just being in a pool or enclosed body of water, albeit most times those fears come from, oh no, what if there's a shark somehow in this water, rather than this zombie thing. But the right tone was set here. And I feel like I could literally sit here all day and list off a bunch more, but I truly was affected by these episodes growing up. Luckily, none of them turned into a long life-lasting fear of clowns or what's underneath the water in a pool, so there's the bright side. I love that I got to grow up with media like this that never went too far overboard that it became inappropriate for a younger audience to watch, but definitely pushed the opening for what else was out there to enjoy. It's also cool seeing early acting performances from young Canadian actors that turn out to be people like Ryan Gosling. He's so much more than just Ken. I give a lot of credit to Are You Afraid of the Dark for getting me into the genre of horror, and for my love of it now as an adult. For some reason, there is comfort in feeling uncomfortable when watching shows or films or even playing games that fall into horror, that really bring out a real sense of adrenaline, spatial awareness, and for some like me, fun, like no other type can. I really enjoy revisiting some of these iconic episodes that really freaked me out when I was younger, and I really appreciate how they were made and how effective they were back in the day. After the first 5 seasons of the show, Are You Afraid of the Dark took a brief hiatus, where Nickelodeon would end up producing the series to keep it going for another 2 seasons from 1999 until 2000. From there, the property lay dormant for quite some time, where after 17 years it was announced that it would be coming back, but as a special movie. Until that went radio silent, and it eventually came back around as a limited series in 2019 with the subtitle of Carnival of Doom. And really, it was a 3-episode special. This did well enough, or had Nickelodeon interested enough to keep the limited series going with a follow-up 6-episode series subtitled Curse of the Shadows in 2021, and even a 3rd series a year later in 2022 subtitled Ghost Island. Now, I've never looked into these aside from checking out some clips of them, so I can't really speak on their quality, how they compare to the original series, or any of that, so maybe if there's interest, next Halloween season, we can dive into them and see what they're all about. So let me know. Also, let me know your thoughts on Are You Afraid of the Dark? Did this series affect you when you were younger? Or if you were born after the series ended, what are your thoughts on this classic 90s show if you went back to watch it? And of course, which episodes were your favorite or scared you the most? Tell me in the comments. I've been Jordan Fringe. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.